So thank you everyone for joining us. This is the Donor Database Experts monthly webinar. And this month we are talking about the great NXT migration that we're all excited about, maybe a little scared. So we wanted to have a conversation about the good, the bad, the mysterious, the things that we are seeing and hearing from clients, what we think you can dive into right away, and the stuff that just kind of generally excites us. So I'm Marlisa Post, and I am a database and automation specialist with Donor Database Experts. And with me are my colleagues, Denise Wooden, one of our consultants, and also Steph Williams, one of our consultants. So thank you both for being here again. I know I drag you on here all the time. It's only because you're fabulous. So let's dive in and let's just kind of level set and talk about, what do we mean when we talk about database view, web view, NXT, unified view? We hear all these terms floating around. So let's level set before we go any further. Steph, do you want to dive in?
Sure. So database view, Razor's Edge is, when you open it up and you go into the database view version of it, it is the Citrix based one, the one that looks like it was built in the early 90s, might be generous, late 80s. The one that, is clearly a little outdated, but I think I can speak for a lot of people on our team, feels very familiar and comfortable in a way too. Feels very database-y, kind of an old school software program, but we know where to click and we know where everything is. WebView, NXT, Unified View, they're all the same thing. I think you can kind of tell how long someone's been in Razor's Edge based off of which one they call it. Blackbaud has changed their terms on us a little throughout, but that is the web-based version of it, where when you just go to renxt.blackbaud.com, it's the one that they have been building out for 15 years now, I feel like. That might be an exaggeration, but it's close. Where it feels, much more modern and it is a nice clean look. And so it is the same data both ways, but one is just a very different view on it. It was a nice add-on, and it is soon to be our only access to Razor's Edge. Thus, this webinar.
I tend to say NXT when I
I do
hear,
too.
yeah, Denise, same.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Okay, so what does it mean when we talk about the Razor's Edge database being sunsetted in 2027? Denise, what's going to happen?
So supposedly in 2027, and this is the first time for a while that we've not seen that date change too drastically lately, but the database Citrix view is going to go away and we are only going to have the web view, as I like to call it. So it's feeling a little more real coming up than it has previously.
Yeah, I think they've been saying now late summer, I think is the last that I heard. I don't think that's changed for a while. Is that right, Steph? Is that what you've
Yeah, I
been?
think so. We used to joke, well, right now they're saying, 2026, and then come 26, they'll push it to 2027. But it's been that same target for a little while now. So
Well, I think the pace that we've been seeing too
yes.
of changes is a good indication that yeah, they're serious about this. Which has been great, but it's been head spinning. I don't know about the folks who are joining us today, but the changes are coming fast and furious, and then sometimes there's changes on top of changes. So definitely check out those product updates, the briefings that Blackbaud's been doing. They're very helpful. You can see on your home screen, they have a wonderful update blog, and they'll usually announce in there when the product briefings are coming up. And so I would encourage folks to go to those. They've
Yep.
been really helpful. So Steph, people hear this idea of a transition and they assume that this is almost like a traditional data migration. Is that accurate, or is the underlying database going to be largely the same? What are some of the
Yeah.
implications for data management?
Yeah. It is not a migration in the same way. I mean, it's a migration in how we log in and how we view the data, but it is not, you don't have to move your data from anything from one place to another. And so I think that's, one key point. It's just another look into the same data that lives there. That being said, though, some fields aren't available in WebView yet or might never be. And also the way that you see the data in WebView is a little bit different. So I think what we've been doing, with some of the orgs that we work with is, you may have been able to kind of ignore some of this old data and other data points, but it's a lot more obvious now in WebView when you go to a record, and vice versa. Some of the stuff that maybe you got used to seeing very easily in database view, it's a little more hidden in WebView. So although you don't have to move any of your data from one system to another, I think one of the things people are seeing is that it is a good time to evaluate whether your data is in the right spot to begin with, and what that looks like moving forward. So kind of a yes and no answer, I guess.
Denise, any thoughts you have about as people are going into this transition, how they should be thinking about their data?
I think it just brings up a lot of questions within teams too. I think one of the, as Steph was talking there, one of the things that has come up with many of our clients is the preferred name. So addressee
Yeah.
salutations and how those translate from the database view to the web view. And also, how do people, when they log into the web view, look at preferred name? It's very different context to me than the nickname field in the database view. And so people are leaning on that and using it a lot more. And so making sure that your addressee salutations are updated with that. And just so some of those things, it gives kind of an example of how it's the same quote unquote same field translation, but it can mean a little difference within the context of the different settings of it.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's actually a really good point that you just brought up, Denise, because there's some nomenclature that's different from database view to web view. So no longer do we have attributes everywhere, we now have custom fields everywhere. And one of my favorite, honestly, is that gifts are no longer cash, they are one-time gift. Because it was
Yes.
so confusing when I'd be training our clients and
Yep.
I'd have to say, well, your gift type is cash and your pay method is not cash. And I love also that it's no longer pay cash, it's pledge
Let's
payment.
wait a minute. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some others that I'm not thinking of, but yeah, I really
I was on a meeting the other day and I kept saying solicitor and I was like, nope, fundraiser. Because I was working with a couple people now that really truly I don't think even have access to the database view. So finally one of them was like, I'm sorry, this might be a really dumb question. Is solicitor and fundraiser, what's the difference in the context? They are literally the exact same thing. I am just using the wrong word. I'm sorry, old habits. So I think in some of that too helps you frame up, how do you use the data correctly? So
Mhm. Wonderful. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you hear as we are moving from database view to NXT? Steph, have you heard anything from clients that you're like, oh wow, no, we need to disabuse you of this notion immediately?
I think it's that it's all or nothing. I think more and
Mhm.
more as we get closer to the sunset, there's so much more that you can do in NXT. But it's still, there are still things you need database view for. Maybe not your entire team. And I think that is a big shift that has happened over the last couple months with as much as has been pushed out. Is, in the past, I think even, a couple years ago, things like that, your frontline fundraisers could probably exist almost entirely in NXT. Especially, the ones that aren't heavy into pulling their own list and things like that. But a lot of the other teams still needed to live a lot in database view and maybe do things at NXT. We've seen that shift kind of dramatically over the last, I think, even the last year, 6 months, where you can start in NXT and probably do most of your work there and then go back to database view for, imports, exports, global changes, some of the big stuff that I know we'll talk about later. But I think there is still there's still a need for some of the stuff in the database view, but it's not for everybody on your team anymore either. That has to go into database view. So I think that's one of the big misconceptions out there is someone has to live only in database view or only live in NXT. There are things NXT does better, which is weird to say finally, and that you can only do in NXT that you can't do in database view. So you're still kind of working through both of the systems at the same time, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Denise, any misconceptions you're hearing?
I would just add that as things are moving, it's worth testing every process you do to see what the holes might be in that process going to the web view, knowing that it's not fully built out, knowing that there are things changing almost on a daily basis. But as the time frame gets closer, it's important to start testing those things. And as Steph said earlier, in the database view, you could ignore some fields more than you can now in the web view. And so as you're testing out some of those things like, oh, I still have time to address this in the database view. What does that look like? And also seeing how those processes need to change and update too. So just kind of I always say test but verify. Test out the solution in the data or in the web view, and then go verify it that it's doing exactly what you think it's doing in the database side of things.
Absolutely. And I think also thinking about, we're talking that it's a smooth migration. But I know we had a discussion about some of the things that actually you could be in danger of losing. So can we talk just a little bit about the media, especially, and attachments and things like that? Denise, what are some things people need to be aware of with media in web view versus database view?
So with media, I've continued to say your safest option is to add it into the database view because it kind of translates, it goes to the web view. But if you add stuff just purely in the web view, it doesn't always get back to the database side of things. Also, just knowing that the searchability and knowing what's out there is not as available in the web view with media. So if you're ever trying to move a bunch of media or anything like that, you may run into issues with
Yeah, Steph, what have you been seeing and telling people around especially media and both
Kind of
views?
same thing. I mean, I think the media is one of those where I think it's just knowing. I think the biggest thing is consistency. So, one of the things which is good and comes with some caveats, I think as database managers, especially, is it makes it a lot more accessible for everyone on your team to add data in, which again, great, but they might just be throwing, at least the attachment's on the record somewhere. And that's true. It's better. I'd rather it be there than in your email, on a desktop, whatever. But setting some standards around, when you do it and it's a part of an action, how do you handle that? If it's part of an opportunity, where do you want it? And naming them and, so just making sure that the information is where you need it so that it's useful going forward. And I think that applies to media as well.
And I think not being surprised and maybe telling people on your team that if you do add something in one place and you don't see it in the other place, don't be surprised. That's a kind of a feature, not a bug.
Yeah,
So, Steph, you brought up a good point though about who can add what to where. Let's talk about security
sure.
in NXT because from where it was even a year ago, the way now that you can drill down into
Hmm.
who can see and add what is crazy.
It is.
And I think it's wonderful. Steph, is there anything that you're telling clients about that or things you're hearing from clients with the security settings?
Yeah, I think it's just being aware that it is different and it is changing, and that what you decide today might not be what it looks like on Monday when you come back to it again. We've done that. We've had a client where we spent an hour, talking through here's all the different, security groups you might want. Here's how to set them up, and then it was like a Friday afternoon, and on Monday morning when she went in to actually make the changes for all of their people, she's like, it's literally different than it was on Friday. Yep, that tracks. So just keeping up to date on those. I have noticed that they're not always releasing those in the updates as much when things move around or new security stuff pulls out. I might be missing it. So please, if you have seen it elsewhere, anyone listening, let me know. But I think just following there and also knowing that there are some security things that only exist in NXT and there's still some that only exist in database view and understanding how those work together and which supersedes the other. We might have people who have volunteers and they don't want them to see any gift information. They only want to see donor contact information. You can't do that in WebView yet, but you can in database view, restrict it by like record type, or there's still a little bit more nuance in database view. So either way is fine, just knowing that what the impact is of the different changes you make in both of them. So.
Denise, have you had any experience with clients sort of freaking out with the new security settings?
I think just that it's changing so fast for them. And I've gotten several emails like, help, I can't find this, or help, I can't do this now. One person just emailed not that long ago, they couldn't export anymore. Well, a checkbox got changed in their
Mhm.
security and stuff like that. So as things are being updated and you're not seeing things or, it's adjusted, I would go look at security first. And I would also add to what Steph said of looking in NXT and in the database because sometimes they do override or look at it, them differently.
Mhm.
So if something's conflicting, it may cause conflicting in what you're seeing too.
Great. We have a question, which, yeah,
Love
please,
it.
to everyone
Yes,
who's
please.
viewing this, ask questions and also share your NXT and database experiences. We want to hear about them. But the question is, Kate asks, what are the priority items slash tasks to start doing in NXT, whether you're in a gift or a database administrator role? So what are the things, yeah, you should start in NXT now? Denise, do you want to hop in first?
So I like to look at the things that they haven't converted it yet. Anything you're going to have to globally change, some of the table cleanup, some of those things that you could kind of just ignore with the checkbox of inactive. Also, like I said earlier, with the addressee salutations and the preferred name, taking a look at that. The table, when you go to add addressee salutations too, looks a little bit different in the web view, and it can come across a little more messy at
Mhm.
different times based on how it's set up. Sometimes it looks a little cleaner too. So just taking a look kind of at the overall cohesiveness and the usability right now in NXT compared to what you're used to in the database.
Steph, what about you? What do you think?
Um, I like to look at any of the things that you do on a regular basis. So if you're doing things, certain things weekly, monthly, things like that, what is there in NXT already? Can you start to get familiar with it while you still have the time to sort of verify if it's the same in database view versus NXT while you've got both of the views available still? Um, I I really like queries in NXT now. I should probably start saying unified view. Sorry. I'm just gonna go with NXT so I'm consistent this whole hour at least. But the queries in there, I don't know if anyone else runs them the same way we kind of do, where you're just massive amounts of information in your queries sometimes. And the idea, the way that you can just like click the run and let it go without bogging down your system and continue doing other work is like one of my favorite pieces of the queries out there. So that I think I think for me the biggest thing, especially if you're in like a database admin role, is testing out all of the processes that everyone else on your team is using on a regular basis so that when they come to you and say, okay, I'm ready. How do I do this? You feel comfortable talking to them about it as well. So, how do you enter an action as you walk through an action, as you look at a portfolio, as you get your work center set up? Maybe the work center is a good one to add to that too. Coming up with, kind of a best practice work center. Blackbot has some, columns that they include in filters. We have our own at DDX, we have our own standard of, this is how we recommend. Here's other columns that we think are really useful. Go through all of those workflows yourself so that when your team comes to you and asks, you know what they need as well. And when you look at it from their perspective, it might help you understand where there's some other stuff that can get cleaned up to get you really prepared for only having NXT.
I think also you just brought up a really great point, and this is something even in database view that we are big on, which is, be in charge of the database, don't let the database be in charge of you. So whether you're in database view or now NXT in the work center, or whether you're trying to look at things where you need to filter or anything like that, you can add all kinds of filters and columns. So definitely don't feel like you need to be limited by what's there. Think about what are the things you want to see in the work center when you're looking at a list of constituents or things like that. You don't have to have that little circle with the initials in it as your first thing there. If you don't want it, feel free to get rid of that. We have a question from Gretchen. So I enter both monetary and in-kind gifts. Monetary seems pretty simple, but in kind, I can't seem to get the options that we created in database view. Gretchen, do you mind just going into questions again and just give us a little more detail about what are some of those options that you have in database view that you're not seeing in NXT? Because I think, Gretchen, we would love to hear that and talk about
Yeah.
that. So while Gretchen is hopefully doing that, let's talk a little bit about what do we feel like some of the most helpful day-to-day things are for users. And actually, again, for people who have joined us, please share what you find most helpful day-to-day in NXT. But Steph, what do you find for our clients? This is the most useful thing day-to-day.
The work center. I think both for like the frontline fundraisers, but also even the database admins. I know if you're working on some portfolio review with them too, like being able to pull it up. And I think this kind of goes back to the settings piece too. There's a specific setting in the security piece where you can allow people to see everyone else's portfolios as well. And the way that that plays out in practice is you can, when you go to the work center, you can actually, there's like a link up there that says change fundraiser, and you can toggle through and view the work center as someone else, which can be super helpful. I like to provide that for some of the managers too, with that have a team of fundraisers underneath them. Because I think when they're talking through it, then they can say, okay, I'm in my meeting with Denise. Let's pull up your portfolio and actually look at your list. And instead of relying on the database admin to pull a spreadsheet that is outdated the second it leaves the system, now you've got the live data there and you can click in, you can go change your actions, you can do whatever you need in there. And so that kind of piece of being able to replicate how you're seeing it with someone else. And then the other piece of that is the gifts. I think it gives your fundraisers really good insight into here's the gifts that have come from people in your portfolio, even if you were not assigned on that gift. It gives them a nice another layer of insight to what's going on. Did they make a gift I didn't know about? Should I have asked for that? Did I ask for it and no one knew, so it's not tied to an opportunity? Like putting a lot of that ownership and that back on the people who own the portfolios too, I think is really helpful because we don't need to be relying on someone on the team to be constantly pulling, spreadsheets and emailing them, and then you've got it, living everywhere else. So I think leveraging the fact that it is all kind of live updated within a matter of pretty quickly.
Mhm. Great. Denise, what do you feel is the most helpful for just users day to day in NXT?
I think the gifts are getting there. And that's where I
Mhm.
live most of my time is in the giving history and stuff like that, because I work with a lot of gift processing side of things. And I do like the way that the new batch looks, and I like some of the functionality. It's not completely there yet, but I do think down the road as they're developing stuff like that, it'll be helpful. I also think with the query ability in NXT and being able to like hit to have it run and it not completely stop all of your systems is one thing that I love, that I kind of
Mhm.
latched onto first with query, because I would end up locking up my system trying to pull out data from databases in the past. So just being able to work around that has been really a game changer for me, pulling the data out.
I'd say query is my favorite. First of all, I love that I just don't even have to log into the Citrix part of it. Like, just pull up the web, boom. But yes, also it used to feel like if you put too many criteria in, it just made it cry and sort of have a breakdown. And yeah, now it's so fast. It doesn't lock things up. I think it
Ooh,
exports.
speaking of query, I love that you can look for a query across like all of the folders too.
Yes.
Instead of being like, which one was that in that I need to go look for it in? You can just search all of your categories instead of one by one folders. So
Yes, yeah, because we have clients who might have easily 20, 30 folders, categories
Oh,
in there. And yeah, that's a game changer. We have an interesting question about query, but I'm going to come back to Gretchen first. So Gretchen says that with the gift in kind, there's the usual name, date, but we've created a gift in kind category description. There are 6 of them, all with drop-down options for faster entry. Drop-downs such as clothing, electronics, households, etc. So, Gretchen, correct me if I'm wrong, that's sounding like it's going to have to be an attribute. So, would
yes.
you guys are?
I wonder if that was my thought too. I wonder if it's attributes, custom fields, and at which point you can add custom field column in WebView batch, but you can't add specific custom fields, which is a piece that is definitely something we're feeling too. In the change, where in and database you could have all of the columns lined up for each specific attribute, and you don't get that in WebView yet. Hopefully it'll change, but I know that I remember at BBCon last year when they showed the batch view of like the grid view of batch entry in NXT. That was one of like the first question that popped up. I think everyone in the room was, I like that, but no, I want to see them across. I don't want them all lumped together. So I'm curious if they're working through that or not.
I feel like they're going to have to, or there's just going to be some kind of
Yeah,
a
so
riot
yes,
across the
exactly.
land. So Gretchen, I think that sounds like what you're referring to. And so, yes, that is definitely an issue right now, and honestly, a reason that I think Denise, you can confirm. But I think we're still having a lot of clients still do a lot of their batching in database view. Is that right?
yeah, most of our clients still live in the database view. We've had a couple clients convert too early and they got very frustrated. And so they went back to the database view. I would say now with some of the reports that they've recently rolled out with the validation and the commit control report, where people are looking at it as an option to start going, if they already tried, go back or start trying at least one batch, start with something simple, do that, and then slowly work into getting all of your gifts batching into the web view.
Yeah, and just proceed with caution if you have a lot of
Yeah.
attributes on your gifts. Yeah. So Lauren says that I've noticed in query in WebView that the find in list functionality only searches through a finite number of rows. If the query results are long, it won't find information past X number of rows. Steph, I see you kind of nodding. Have you
I
experienced
think is
this or
it
heard about this?
2,000 rows it only shows in the query, like in the preview, versus in database view, you can scroll forever down. So yes, I can't remember exactly what the limit is, but that is true.
Yeah, and so basically, if you need to find anything beyond that, you're going to have to export out into Excel or something like that, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. If you can build it in a list, you might have better options versus a query, but there's not as many fields in like query or gift lists as there are, or constituent or gift lists as there are in query. So there could be, kind of a combination of those two.
Dwayne is giving us a priority item. Great. Clean your duplicates. Oh, Dwayne, you're speaking our language. Clean your duplicates by running in both WebView and Database View. Database View gives you a better view of household records. Aim to have 0 dupes every day. Dwayne, you are a disciplined person, and we love to see that. Um, Denise, I know kind of as you said, you oversee a lot of our gift clients or gift processing clients. And certainly one of the ways that duplicates are still created, it's not as bad, but with the credit card giving through NXT, at least now they've given functionality around trying to get rid of this. But so when duplicates happen, what are you telling clients to do? Are you saying address it in NXT first, then check it out in database view, vice versa? What are we telling people?
I still rely on the database view a little bit more on this because I trust it more and I haven't had as much great experience in the web view. I also think, as you've said, that credit cards are causing a lot of duplicates. That is, I mean, that was in the database view site also. But I've seen a lot of duplicates be created with tributes, and it's through the
Mm,
online giving piece too. The searchability in the web view is not quite the same as it is in the database view. And we've had people that you can't find the inactive records. So they're creating a new record thinking it's not there. And then
Mhm.
when they go to the database view, they're like, oh, there was a record. And so then we end up having to merge it too. So I do think that duplicates is something that as much as you can stay on it anytime, no matter in your web view or the database view, you just get to a better overall database too.
I think
what about
kind of,
the,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, Steph, go
No,
ahead.
it's kind of tangent to that too, is sort of
Yes.
there's a different sort of data cleanup that happens. I think the defaults are missing. I know they're coming, but I think that's part of it too. So if you're used to
Mhm.
certain fields being added automatically when you create a constituent, either certain add cells or constituent codes, things like that. There isn't an option to do that in the same way that there is in database view. There isn't currently that option in NXT. So just making sure that you're creating some other sort of checks for that, some data health, audit query kind of things.
Mm. And we saw that that's coming. The defaults
Mhm.
are coming, just not
Yes,
here.
thankfully.
Yeah, yeah. This is with our clients. This is one of our big things in database view using if you're in a constituent record under constituent, the load defaults when you
Hmm.
create a new constituent, and from there you can have it automatically put in kind of your base constituency code, but also any additional add cells and the primary add cell in the format that your organization
Yep.
needs. So we are dying for that to be in NXT because it's how we help our clients keep their data consistent. Can you also maybe, Steph, talk a little bit about for people who maybe haven't been as diligent as Dwayne? Um, I think it'd be good before we're in NXT completely for them to clean up
Yeah.
their duplicates. What are some of the ways to root out duplicates? And also the duplicate count in NXT, usually it's not accurate. So yeah, what can people do to really root out the hidden duplicates?
Yeah, I think it's and I know that Dwayne mentioned this in his comment slash question too. was I think there's still an art to using both of them, both the database in the duplicate record tool in database view and NXT. I think NXT is a little too cautious on what it considers a duplicate. But also, you have some variety, some settings in there you can do. On the flip side, what database view considers a duplicate is sort of comical in a way, so that count can be way high. I am always matched as a potential duplicate with a Stephen Wilson because we have the same first couple letters of our first and last name, right? And so there's sort of a magic that happens in between the two of them. So I like the database view one to take a really good holistic view, especially like within households and things like that. But on the web view, I think you get a little bit better picture of if they truly are, and it kind of explains why it's matching and things like that. So it is definitely a matter of looking at both of them regularly. So
Yeah. Oh, Kim has a great comment. I'm concerned about the amount of time it takes to process a batch in NXT versus database view. Slow window loading and long wait time for data to appear after approval. Oh my God, that green pulsing dot.
I had a blue one the other day. That was a nice variety. My little dot turned blue. I don't know if it meant something different, but
It haunts my dreams. I don't know. So Denise, are you hearing anything from clients about that they find NXT to be a little slower than database view?
I think even just searching for constituents, the searchability is a little slower and it's a little more picky than the database view. So being able to find constituents, I do think that that is a common complaint from my gift processing team is that it takes longer. And I think one piece to add to is this is a change for everybody. The wait time is a little bit longer because you're web-based, so that's a little different style. And it's new to you. It's new to all of us. So everything that's a change is going to take a little bit longer. So you add on the longer wait time and searchability plus trying to figure out something new and processes that you used to do that would take, no time at all now just took you 5-10 minutes. And so as that stuff starts to add up, it becomes more of an annoyance and creates some anxiety around how long is my normal day-to-day going to take me going forward.
Mhm.
And so I think just pairing all that together, it makes a kind of a perfect storm as we're going through this transition.
I also think we all know our own little kind of shortcuts if we're really familiar with database view and knowing I can type maybe the first 5 letters and then put an asterisk and it's going to find what I need. Especially as you get to know your own database really well. And WebView just behaves a little bit differently, and I'm sure we'll figure those things out too. I just saw Kim's other comment pop up and it made me laugh. She said, sorry, I'm stealing Marley says his group was told
Go
in a
for it.
webinar that we just typed too fast. I
Unbelievable.
feel like there's a little bit because it's trying to do some of that predictive, like I don't want to say the right, I don't know what like that predictive guessing that Google does to us too when you're searching for a constituent in the search bar up on top. So yes, I also have sort of run into that same sort of I'm typing it. I also still instinctively will try to put an asterisk in front of things and then it doesn't find it. And I'm like, why not? Oh, because it doesn't need the asterisk. So when I put it, it actually is looking for something that has the asterisk in it versus using it as a wildcard like in database view. So there's just some muscle memory stuff in there too that I know we all need to work through, but some things I think definitely are faster in database view, some are a little bit faster in web view, and so it's just figuring it out one versus the other, I think.
I think too, Kim, that lag that you're talking about is real, and actually, it kind of bit me the other day. I was helping a client integrate their constant contact, which a lot of people are doing now, which is wonderful. But I had pulled in the list. It was their board. Clearly, they had a board, and it came up with no people were in there, and I was losing my mind trying to figure out what had happened. And it just took maybe like 10 minutes for it to catch up and actually load the people in. So yes, that lag between, whether it's that you enter things in NXT and they actually
Mhm.
get onto the records or any of that is certainly a thing. I think that we're all gonna have to, I don't know, practice a little meditation in between as we wait. Um, so, we're talking a lot right now about the boots on the ground folks, which is of course where we live, but also, for leadership and, for any directors of development, VP leadership folks that we have on here today. Leadership, what should leadership know and understand about this? Denise, what do you think leadership should be understanding as their team is going through this process?
I think it's managing the anxiety and that this is a big change for everybody involved. And so you'll see some from your frontline fundraisers to your database staff, you'll see some changes and see some questioning and like anxiety around it. And also allowing them the freedom to take time to build out some SOPs, update stuff from the database
Yeah.
to the web view as they're making the change, giving them their freedom to also test and experiment really helps to ease some of those anxieties and stuff. Because it's not like Steph mentioned earlier, it's not this big migration that you have to physically go move the data, but there are processes and stuff that are going to change while the data is moving and shifting. And just your screenshots and all your SOPs now need to be updated. And some of those little things, there are resources out there. There's a lot of things that you can use to help through some of those things, but it's still going to take time from the people inside the organization.
Steph, what about you? What would you want leadership to know and understand?
Yeah, I think that, and also just some grace in that things might take a little bit longer, or there might be some other questions, or just that there's a little bit of stress going on, right? Like it's a big change, especially for people who have worked in it and for a long time. I think the other part of it too is like it's okay. Like if this might be a chance to ask those questions that are, we've always done it this way before, and maybe we did it that way because that was a workaround we needed. It was a
Mm.
band-aid we slapped on 10 years ago to make it work in database view. Can we evaluate what that looks like now? And so, I think simultaneously, sometimes leadership is the first one to say, no, make it, I want it to look nicer and newer. And sometimes like, I just want to see it the way I've always seen it. Well, that might not be how it's coming out of the system anymore. So it might just need to look a little bit differently. And so I think just kind of that understanding that it's changing. The data is staying the exact same, but the way it's coming out and the way you're looking at it is changing. And that is, I think, in the end, good, and it's a great opportunity. But in the meantime, it might be a little extra work or uncomfortable or stressful, especially for the people who are in the system day to day. And even with the, brand new big change, it's still not a push a magic button and get the report you want, like I think a lot of us have been asked for. So,
I think too, while maybe the major gift officers, can live in NXT and frankly are probably loving the fact that if you're a new major gift officer, you don't have to learn database view.
oh, and you
You
don't
know,
have to download that horrible app from like 10 years ago. I don't know if anyone else remembers that. But,
those of us who, if you know, you know. Um, but I think though for the gift processors and the database, administrators, right now you really have to live with, one foot kind of in each pond, and it is
Mhm.
stressful to go back and forth and try to remember, wait, this thing happens here, but not here, and right now, even as we have new clients with new processors coming on, we're having to train them in both worlds, and so yeah, I think definitely giving grace around that is really important.
I was going to
Um,
ask if do we have anyone that is solely gift processing in NXT yet?
I think we have one, don't we, Denise?
One.
Maybe.
I was wondering if anyone has been able to fully make the jump and not need database view for anything yet. So I know the pledge piece coming out was a huge shift, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's the other part too is what you might not have been able to do a month ago, it might be out there now.
right, the
So
commit reports. I mean,
yeah,
huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, for those watching, if you've been able to totally make that shift in
I would love
gift
to know.
processing to NXT, let us know. We want to hear about that. So as we're saying, new things are yeah, Chris Waters is saying it is it so Chris, hey Chris, is it currently possible to fully process gifts in NXT? So Denise, I'm gonna let you, we've kind of touched on it, but Denise, I'm gonna let you answer, Chris.
I'm going to say yes with a big asterisk at the end, not completely. So yes, 95% is there now, and that has changed in the last even week when they released the validation and the gift control report, but it's still not all out there yet. So I would say yes for most of it, but I also, if there's something complex or more linkage and stuff like that, I always tell them to also go check in the web or in the database view after they commit the gifts from the web view.
Yeah, definitely run those queries that you use to kind of audit
Mhm.
stuff, make sure it's all in. And Ruth is saying, I try to only enter through WebView, but have to open database view approximately once a week. Yeah, I think sounds about right on brand, right, guys?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah. I
Now
think it depends on your
Mercedes,
kind of your mix of gifts too,
Yeah.
and where
yeah.
they're coming in.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, again, do you have a lot of attributes, and things like that? Now Mercedes here is speaking my language.
Good point.
Mercedes says no, still can't run mail from WebView, so can enter gifts there, but still have to go back to database view to run letters. So one of the things that I do is work a lot with our clients on being able to build out acknowledgement templates, things like that. So I live in the mail module, and Mercedes, I did see in the wonderful, I don't know if everyone has seen this yet, but there's a matrix that Blackbaud has out there that shows you what's coming, what's happened, and all that. So in 2026, they are saying that there will be a version of the mail module in WebView. So hopefully Mercedes by year's end, you'll be able to have that. But I agree with you for right now, you really need to, Mercedes says, yay. Yeah, for right now, you do need to pull those, the mail merge from database view. Same with the honor memorial, and they do say they're going to move that over as well, which is great. Oh, Ruth says we cannot enter matching gifts in WebView.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good point, Ruth. And applying gifts to pledges is not easily done in WebView. Yeah, so I think even with that new functionality, I think it's just not as easy as in database
Yeah.
view.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, let's see. So Jacqueline says, "Oh, a Canadian. Hello, neighbor. Canadians use receipt stack, something that is only available in database view, with receipt
Mm.
series replacing it. Do you know any Canadians who have made the move to processing gifts in WebView with this change to receipt series, particularly for gifts outside NXT donation forms?" Wow, I don't know. Have we heard anything with Canadians? Because yes, Canada does have some very specific receipting rules.
I have
Um,
not specific to that, but I'd be curious if anyone else on the call. I don't know how many Canadians we have on the call, but I'd be curious, but no, not that specifically.
yeah, so we have a few Canadians, and we also have some friends from across the pond in the UK joining us, which is lovely. Yeah, Denise, have you heard anything just kind of ear to the ground about the receipt series?
No, I have not on those.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, unfortunately, Jacqueline, we do not have a good answer for that. Maybe if anyone else who's viewing has any information. But I'd say also, I know. Oh, oh, Dwayne. Okay. Oh, Dwayne is in Ontario. Oh, you're definitely a neighbor for me, Rochester. Holla. So yes, we here in Burlington, Ontario, use Fundraise for online gifts and receipt through NXT and use receipts stack. Okay, wonderful. So there you go. So Jacqueline, it is possible. And so maybe yeah, look into Fundraise and then receipting through NXT using receipt stack. Wonderful. Thank you, Dwayne. Okay. So the thing I'm excited to talk about before we close out, and again, we'd love everyone to participate. So new things are coming out weekly. What is the thing that you're super excited about? The one thing I shared, of course, was the mail module. I'm also really excited to see what export when it's kind of paired with query is going to
That was
look
going to
like.
be my
That's,
answer.
I'm sorry. Oh, Steph, I stole your answer.
That was going to be mine. I think I think from my baby days in Razor's Edge of, query is a grouping tool. Query is a grouping tool. Don't use query to
Oh,
export, right? But we all kind of break our own rules sometimes, right? As long as you know what the limitations are, and sometimes I want to see separate lines instead of across in separate columns. So as long as you know the functionality difference between query and export, you can use it the right way. But yes, query is a grouping tool. I feel like that was one of the first things I heard about that when they started moving to Razors or to NXT and building things out there was we're going to combine them and make them work, similarly but different. And I am very excited to see what that looks like. And I think the opposite, but related to that is import. I think they first introduced the idea of being able to import into a batch for gifts a while ago. So excited to see what that actually looks like because I think that opens up
oh,
a huge opportunity for, especially if you've got things coming in from an event or from, another online donation platform and you don't have an API connector for it. Or you might want to have a little more control over it and look at the spreadsheet first before you bring it in. So I think both of those kinds of bulk in and out processes.
Wonderful. Denise, what are you excited about?
Steph stole mine with
Molly's
what
just
I'm
stole mine.
most excited for because there are so many clients that we work with that maybe don't have a budget or can't add another because of security reasons, have an API connector or any other outside importing processes. And so using and
Hmm.
the excitement that we will be able to import into a batch and review it and not go straight to records, which is terrifying to me all the
Sure.
time. And gives us a little more checks and balances. I'm really excited to see how that will impact some of our clients.
That's going to be a game changer, honestly. Yeah, because not everyone can afford, Omatic or whatever, and of course, finance departments love it when you just bypass the batch altogether and go directly
Yep.
onto a gift. Jordan says excited for query lists in uh, in NXT to come out. Yeah, I think that's going to be amazing. I know also the membership functionality is kind of slowly coming
Yep.
over. Oh, and adjustments, gift adjustments is another thing that I
Oh,
think is not there yet, right?
mm.
Kind of an
I think
important
just a
one.
lot of that stuff that you is sort of habit that you don't necessarily even realize how often you do it and you go to look for it in NXT, it's not there. I think um I use like the properties an odd amount
Oh,
on different records, so I'm curious to see when they will release that. I think it's I don't remember if it's a I should look, I forgot if it's a this year or a next year thing, but just all of those little pieces of data that are helpful. I also think I know that they are the switch to kind of the one big view of the constituent to having kind of more of the tabbed view like we're used to in database view. I am curious, as they switch to more of that tabbed view like we're kind of used to, what other functionality comes out of that? Like, does that open up literally, more room on the page to kind of do different things there? So, curious what that'll look like too.
I am too, because that tile view actually is something I really kind of like. And, for those of us who, are excited about the Power Automate possibilities, one of the things you can do in Power Automate is actually create custom tiles.
Hmm.
So I'm going to be interested to see how then that plays with the tab
Yeah.
view. So yeah, that is going to be an interesting one. So as you have people who are working in database view and in NXT, how do you prevent staff from entering the same information differently in each view, especially since, as we discussed, that you don't have the defaults yet
Hmm.
in um, over in NXT? I know Denise with gift processing people, I'm sure this is a big conversation. Do you have thoughts about how to prevent issues with that?
I think prevention is mostly through education and also through your audit queries, your data health checks, anything you're doing, or that you've released out to the other people in your organization as they're doing it. They don't know what they don't know either, and they're just trying to do the best they can with the information they have. So if you're seeing something being entered wrong or not the way that you guys want it for the future, it goes back to education, writing your SOPs, having a conversation, hosting a training session, creating some excitement too around the freedom and the capabilities that some people might have differently within NXT. So just takes a lot of different things to prevent all of that stuff, just as it did in the database view.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yep.
Steph, what about you, since you oftentimes have to advise on the cleaning up the messes after the fact?
I think it's a few things. It's the audit queries. It's checking, looking at things after, especially after you've done some bulk data, either updates or imports or things like that. I think along with the default sets, the required fields, there's not as much there that you can do yet as far as making things required in NXT. So that's another piece where, maybe you're just used to it and you're used to the system saying, oh, you can't, you have to add this, you have to add this, and it's not doing that as much anymore in certain records. So just I think the data health piece of it and being upfront with people. I mean, I think, when you've entered it in this way, great. When you enter it in WebView, here's a few other things to watch for. Like you have to, make sure you fill this piece out and this piece out. And you might have to, I think, through like custom fields and things like that too, when you're looking at them, not having like a full list of them. And, people go, well, they must not be part of whatever because I don't see it on their attributes, on their custom fields. Well, did you click through? Because you only see 5 of them at a time on their record. So just kind of reminding people the different ways to work.
Right, yeah, I think it's definitely going to take a lot of
Mhm.
yeah, just communication as you guys are saying, and again, all that kind of grace and patience,
Mhm,
to just so everyone is just patient with each other as we go through this.
mhm.
Um, So Kim is asking, are there SOP examples to help orgs? So Kim, please reach out to us. Go to our website, which is donordatabaseexperts.com, and reach out through the email there, and we can definitely help you out with that. So
Mhm.
definitely follow up with us about that. I will share that when the link to this recording is sent out at the end of this week, one thing that we are going to be sharing is a one pager for your leadership, or for any leaders who are on with us right now. Just ways to what we were doing before. Think about how can you support your team, really understanding what it is that's going on with Database View and NXT. So that will be something that will accompany the email that you'll get at the end of the
Yeah.
week. Any final thoughts as we're in the home stretch here, about how to, stop worrying and embrace NXT? Steph, do you have anything you really want people to know as we go into
Um,
this year?
yeah. I think as someone who's I think I have originally the org I was at the time originally signed on with NXT. I want to say it was maybe back in 2014, 15. So we're going on over a decade now. And I think one of the things that we have seen that has vastly shifted in the last, 6 months is how quickly they're pushing things out now. And I'm sure it was all, things they're working on behind the scenes and stuff like that. And now they're ready to push out. Is that things are changing often. But one thing I have noticed is that Blackbaud is getting better, continuing to share what those look like. I think we mentioned it before, but I'm wondering, I'm going to say this out loud so we all remember, maybe sharing a link to that grid that talks about what functionality is coming.
Hmm.
What's nice is it lays through like the functionality when they're expecting it to roll out. Is it planned? Is it not planned? For all the different fields and functionality in there. I think referring to that too, in maybe it's a is it worth tackling now and trying to figure out how to handle it? But if you know that there's like a key P missing in a process, check that. And if it says it's coming later this year, then maybe it's worth just doing it in NXT or doing it in database view for now and dealing with it in January, if that's what it says, or, helping you to prioritize which pieces they're not releasing any more functionality around, the prospect module. So maybe now's the time to really dive in and get people on board with using it only in NXT versus we know there's some work to do on the gifts or on the memberships. Let's keep using our same processes for now and come back later. So I think just signing up for their EPUBs, that they always have out there, making sure that you're, kind of signed up for their update emails and things like that, and then just checking that kind of roadmap that they have ongoing. We don't have to wait every quarter for a roadmap anymore. They're keeping it updated. When we looked at it before, weekly, they're making updates on it. So
Yeah, and Denise, what would you want people to know?
I would just say be excited. Change is
mhm,
not always bad, and there's a lot of good things too that are coming with this. It's kind of fun to see how it's looking prettier, or some of the functionality is a little different. But I just think the overall excitement that change is not always bad, and there are some good things coming out of this change. So relay that message to your teams because I think sometimes the leader of the message
yeah.
can create the anxiety around it and
Mhm.
lose some of the funness or the new things that might be available for you.
I know, Denise, you were saying when we talked earlier about, just try things. I mean, just,
Yeah.
see what happens. And I think that's smart. We also have a team member who is big on the Ted Lasso, be curious. And I think that's a good motto too for going into this last year to go at it with an attitude of curiosity. And Steph, I think that's a great idea for us to share the link to that matrix when we send the email out at the end of this week. All right, so I think we've come to the end. Thank you both. Our next webinar in September is going to be September 22nd, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is maximizing giving season with NXT because, oh my God, it's here. For all of us, we're going to be going into our busy season. So join us and we will try to give you tips and tricks to make it a little easier, a little less painful. And as we said, the recording email will go out at the end of the week, but we will also have that leadership attachment and a link to the Blackbaud matrix. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Denise and Steph, and we will see you next month. Take
Thanks
care.
for hosting us, Marlisa.
Anytime. Bye.